Well, hello there, and thanks for tuning into my channel. Happy PSAT week for all of those who celebrate. Earlier, I sent out a video for first time test takers, most of whom will be sophomores. Some people will be younger than that, some people will actually be older than that. Um, and I wanted to share a video for some advice for some people who have done this before. If this is not your first time taking the PSAT, if this is your second time or sometimes even your third time taking the PSAT, welcome. I'm going to give you some advice on how to approach this test coming up on Wednesday. First of all, you probably want to know, well, who's this guy anyway? If you didn't watch my last video, this is kind of a quick sketch of who I am. I've been tutoring some form of test prep since 2005. In those almost 20 years, I've helped hundreds of students to improve, to get the scores that they need to be accepted to the colleges of their dreams. And I don't just sit here and tell students what to do. I test out my strategies myself. I put my money where my mouth is. I take these tests pretty regularly. I took the ACT in July, and of course, the methods that I show kids how to do, they still work. Got a 36. Once again, it's my second one in a row. I'm going for three in a row in December. And I'm also going to be taking the SAT very soon. The last time I took it was when they switched over the format back in 2016. I took it in May of 2016 and got close to a perfect score, but not quite. Gunning for that double 800 here on my next SAT that'll happen soon. But you don't want to hear about that. You want to hear about what are some of the things that you can do to help you to get better, to do well on this test. So here we go. The first thing that I want you to do is feel that pressure. I mean, this is not the first time you've done this. You're a veteran. You've done it before, and guess what? Your score is going to go up. Many studies have shown that just removing the mystery of like, what is this test, usually causes a slight improvement in score between the first time you take it and the second time you take it, between the second time you take it and the third time you take it. You can see really big jumps when you start to work with people who kind of know what they're doing, who can shepherd you through that. I'll talk more about that a little bit later. Why is your score going up? Well, now you didn't know what to expect before last year's test, and now you do. Also, hey, your brain is still developing. You have a whole year of brain development behind you, and you've had the stuff that you missed on last year's PSAT in class, especially when it comes to math. So expect your score to improve. The question is, how much is that score going to improve? So this is your time. If you're a veteran test taker, especially if you're a junior, this is the year that this test actually really matters. In this era of test optional and test blind applications, you still want to take these tests because many scholarships base their how much money they give based on these test scores. And one of the big ones is the National Merit Scholar. If you get a high enough score, if you get into a high enough percentile, you will be eligible to receive money to get you started, and any money to get you into college and to get you through college is good money. So that's incentive enough to get you prepared for this and to get you to take this test seriously. The other thing is, for most juniors, this PSAT in October kicks off their test prep taking season. This is the time when you're going to start doing the SAT if you choose that, or the ACT if you choose that. I have another video coming up about the differences between the tests and which one you should take and why. So just keep on the lookout for that. But this is going to begin your test prep season. You're going to be waiting for these scores, and they usually come out the first or second week in December. But in the meantime, there's a couple of tests that are being offered, one ACT and one SAT that are going to be offered between now and then. So just keep up on that. And just some general just test taking strategies. There are some pitfalls that you want to avoid. And these are kind of the same whatever test you're taking, whether it's just your first time or your 10th time taking the test, you have to maintain momentum. Do not treat this like a test that you would take in class and feel like you have to answer one question before you move on to the next one. You have to be okay with skipping and coming back because all these questions count the exact same. There's but what could happen is if you spend too much time on one question, then you're not able to give that same thought process to future questions. And as a result, you knock yourself out of getting a good score, and you're ending up having to guess in the last half of the last passage. But if you maintain that momentum, then you'll see the whole test before you have to scramble at the end. And make sure that you know the time. Make sure that you know, all right, so I have this much time for this many questions or this many passages. I need to be halfway through at this time. I need to be all the way through at that time. You should always practice with the time in mind, or you should generally practice with the time in mind. Sometimes you should practice without time, and I'll talk more about that in future videos. Um, so know the time. That'll keep you from having to scramble at the end, or from blanking out or things like that. I mean, I've seen kids with their heads on their desks, resting during the ends of tests, and that is a little bit excessive. But if you take it seriously, there's a chance that won't happen. What about advice on specific sections? Well, okay, so this test is divided up into three sections: reading, writing and language, which is grammar and English rules, and math. And the math, you have a section where you can use a calculator, and you have a section where you can't use the calculator. So I'm just gonna just break it up and give you a little bit different advice as a veteran test taker than I did in my previous video for the first time test takers. All right. So reading. This is actually a clip from an SAT reading passage, not a PSAT reading passage. On the PSAT, you're going to have 60 minutes to complete 5 passages. And I think you have 47 questions, not 52. So fewer questions, you have less time. But here's when I say know the time, I do not want you to think that, okay, well, 60 minutes, 5 passages. I don't want you to divide and think that you have 12 minutes per passage. Because if you did it that way, that means you're bubbling in the last question just as time expires, which is not what you want to do. You want to be able to make it all the way through, keep your momentum, make it through the end of the test with some time to spare. Even if you're skipping 5 questions, 10 questions, that doesn't matter. Give yourself about 10 and a half minutes per passage, which then allows you, if you leave that time per passage, that allows you about 7 minutes to go back and catch any of the questions you left behind as you maintain your momentum throughout the section. All right. So do not treat this like you're in reading class and, oh no, there are all those words on the page and I have to read every single word. There is never a time on the SAT or the ACT that you have to read every single word of any passage. You want to just have an idea where things are. So your first read through should be 2 or 3 minutes max. And in that time, you're not just running your eyes over it and having to reread again, but you're gonna. And this takes practice, okay? So I don't expect you to be able to do this the first time you go through it, but this is the way to get good at this. In your first read through, you're chunking the passage together. The questions dictate where you read the passage closely. So you want to know where things are, and you want to pay attention to lines that are referred to in the questions as well. Keep it moving. Do not get bogged down. Oh man, I didn't understand those details, so I'm going to read this paragraph 3 times. If you do that, you're hurting yourself for later questions. The questions have no heart. The questions are worth the exact same. So please do not do that to yourself. Always keep it moving. Always know the time. Also, this is a perfect example. Let the questions determine where you close read. So for instance, this question number 44, which is tied to the previous question number 43, it has you paying attention to certain groups of lines. Now, in future videos, I'm going to show you how to approach these questions that depend on the best evidence questions. I'll show you a strategy that's going to really help you to demystify those. But you don't pay close attention to anything but the lines that they're talking about. And if you do this right, you actually are anticipating where the right answer is going to be. And I'll show you that later on. But this is we're on the battlefield. The test is on Wednesday. We need to do this quickly. So I'm just giving you some last minute instructions here. Let the questions determine. Question number 45 is a perfect example of that as well. It points you to line 6, line 27, line 28, and 29. Pay close attention there. Read the context, the sentence before, the sentence after, and that'll help you to establish the tone. All right. So don't feel like you have to know where everything is in that first read through. That's my hugest advice for reading. All right. And again, I'll have more videos on those on those things specifically as we move on. The next section is writing in language. So with writing in language, it's based on grammar and grammar rules. You got to follow the rules, and the only way that you follow the rules is if you know the rules. I love watching my 8-year old son play football because a lot of the kids are learning the rules for the first time. And so, what do you mean I can't grab a kid by the face mask and yank him down to the ground? I tackled him, right? It's like, well, okay, so no, you can't do that, kid. Once you know the rules, it's easier to follow the rules. Once you know the grammar rules, it's easier to follow the grammar rules, right? So this is a perfect sort of illustration of some of the things that you need. So, like if we look at this specifically, question number 3, this sentence is a perfect illustration of something that you should watch out for called parallelism. So here, compost, this is talking about the things that compost does, right? So you don't even have to know anything about the passage to understand the setup of this sentence. This says compost minimizes water waste and storm runoff. It increases savings on watering costs and helps reduce erosion. So it does 3 things, right? Minimize water waste, increases savings, and helps reduce erosion. So usually these things come in lists of 3, and they have to be in the same form. So the first form is the 3 things that compost does. Compost minimizes. You do not need a pronoun because we know that we're talking about compost. So we're looking at the one that says increases savings, minimizes water waste, increases savings, helps reduce erosion. Keep that same form and off you go. The second one is a little bit easier to see. We need, because if you notice, we have a closed parentheses after municipality there, and we don't have an open parentheses. So we need one of our answer is going to have an open parentheses, which eliminates A and C. And you should definitely be eliminating answer choices anywhere that you can, right? So we're down to B and D. Do we need a semicolon or not? Well, as we're going to see in future videos, you'll get a better idea of when to use semicolons. It's when you're separating 2 things that are complete sentences. In large quantities, it's not a complete sentence because it doesn't have subject or verb. So we're eliminating D, and that one's got to be B. So that's the thought process that takes you a split second if you know the rules. There are tons of great resources out there that will help you, that have all the rules that are sort of the frequently assessed rules on the SAT and the ACT. Find one and use it. So also just make sure that you're following the rules properly. And you can actually pause this video and see if you can answer questions 12 and 13 based on what you know about the rules, and also make sure that you answer the question that they're asking, right? Because number 12 says which choice most effectively combines the sentences. So do we have an independent clause or dependent clause as our first part of the sentence? That's going to determine largely what punctuation that we use. So keep that in mind. And also 13 is fun with commas. Buildings are draped with festive red banners and garlands. Are they draped with festive? Are they draped with red? Are they draped with banners? No, they're draped with banners that are both festive and red, right? So we don't need commas between festive and red. And so whichever ones don't have that, then that's what we're going to use. Now, B has a comma after draped, and we'll talk about why that's not the right thing to do, and when to use the M dash with C so it's not C. So the only one that it can be is D. All right. So if you got those 2 things, then good for you. You're on your way to getting a better score. All right. And so the final section is the math section. You have a section that you can use a calculator, that comes last, and that you can't use a calculator, that comes first. So again, with the math, do not treat this like a math test, like you're in math class. Keep it moving. Keep it moving. And for the PSAT, sometimes you're going to have to just admit, oh man, well, they got me on that one. I'll have to learn how to do that one in preparation for the SAT or the ACT. Just make sure that you note those mysteries. Now, it can be a mystery for one of 2 reasons. Either you just haven't seen that skill before in math class, Or you're somebody who's a junior and you're in like advanced calculus already, and you haven't been in geometry since 8th grade, so you don't remember that. But you got to bring it back to the front of your mind if you want to do it, if you want to do well on the SAT or ACT math. The goal of this math section, believe it or not, is to do as little math as possible. You should not feel like you have to do a go through a math process on every question. The goal is to first eliminate obviously wrong answer choices, anticipate what right answer choices could be, and then choose, right? So for instance, if we look at this question that talks about this formula, and you're going to see questions like this all the time on the SAT and the ACT. You have a formula that is set up with one variable equal to all these other variables. If we look at our answer choices, we're just rearranging this around and solving this equation for P instead of for E. And immediately, if you know you have to get everything sort of away from the P, the first thing that goes is the 6. And if the 6 is divided on one side, in order to get it to the other side, you have to do the opposite mathematical function, which is multiply. So if we multiply this whole equation by 6, that's going to give us 6e equals something. So we did one step and we've already eliminated half of the answer choices, C and D. And so now all we have to do once we get rid of that 6 is just take the O and the 4M over to the left side. So now we're done, right? Because we know that our answer is going to involve a positive 6e and not a negative 6e. So we've eliminated B as an answer choice. The only one it can be is A. On my actual explainer videos, I go through those a lot slower, but I just wanted to show this as sort of an illustration of what to do and what not to do. All right, so keep it moving. Note the mysteries. We have to do as little math as possible. Also, just make sure that you're answering the question that is actually asked, right? I mean, so like for instance, if we have a system of equations like on the top here, we're looking for the value of y, and sometimes if we have a system of equations, like we want to get once we solve for one variable, we plug it in and solve for the other variable. But if you notice, this one is set up so that all you have to do is add them together, and immediately the x variable eliminates itself, which leaves you already solving for y. So you don't have to actually do anything else once you've added these together and you solve it for y. They're asking for y. Sometimes they'll ask for 3y plus 6, and make sure that you do that and you don't just solve it for y. And sometimes you're just going to be stumped, right? Sometimes you're just not going to know. All right, so they have this. They think I should know how to do it. I don't have any idea how to do it. Just plug and play. They give you 4 answer choices most often. Just pick an answer choice and go from there. So like the question here on the bottom that has the square root there, the square root of 2x plus 6 plus 4 equals x plus 3. Now we could treat this like a math class and solve it. Subtract 4 from both sides, square both sides, get our polynomial, and factor it out and go from there. Yeah, we could definitely do that. Or we could pick one of these things, pick one of our answer choices and see if we can like eliminate. So here I have 3 of the 4 answer choices, A, C, and D, have -1 as an answer choice. And 3 of them also have +5 as an answer choice. So I'm going to choose one of those because I know that if -1 works, then okay, then I'm going to try C, and I'm going to try 5. If 5 works, then the answer is either C or D, and then I'm going to try 0. But if either one of them doesn't work, then I'm going to eliminate the ones that have that in it, and then go from there. All right, so if we try -1, 2 times -1 is -2. -2 plus 6 is +4. The square root of 4 is 2. 2 plus 4 is 6. And 6 does not equal to -1 plus 3, which is +2. All right, so that one's out. We've eliminated 3 of the 4 choices right there. -1 is not one of our solutions, so it's got to be 5. So we're done. We don't have anything else to do there. We've eliminated based on the answer choice. Remember, the goal is to do as little math as possible. All right. So those are just some little snippets of advice. The further down the line you get, the more you're practicing for other tests, the more advice that I have. So just some some final sort of bits of advice, just kind of getting everything into one place. Um, you want to make sure that you maintain your momentum. You want to avoid bogging down on details. You want to follow the rules if you're doing writing and language. Recognize the traps. Maybe that's going to require you to learn the rules. Maybe you're going to have to learn some vocab in order to do either reading or writing in language. Math and everything. You want to keep it moving. You want to note the mysteries. You want to answer what they ask you. And also, I want you to if you feel like after this you come out of this test and you need some help, like our man Charles Barkley needs some help with his golf swing, um, find a guide. That Charles Barkley has probably spent tens of thousands of dollars on guides, and he's actually gotten better lately. Obscured in this photo is my 12-year-old daughter. We go out and play. I love the game of golf, but I play better when I have people who kind of know what they're doing, who can spot the flaws in my swing, of which there are many, and help me navigate around the course. Um, you need help to navigate around the course of test prep. You can do it alone, but it's just harder. It's harder when you don't know what you're doing. So if you need help, I would be honored to help you. So you could definitely reach out to me, leave a message in the comments, and we'll start the ball rolling. But hopefully, this helps you between now and Wednesday to get ready. Hopefully, some of these bits of advice will help you. And good luck on the test. Let me know how things went, and I'll talk to you.